these AMCHAM video conferences. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our Digital Economy Co-Chair, Peter Fischbach, to introduce the speakers. Over to you, Peter.
Sarawan. Great. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for logging into this. This should be an interesting session. I think a lot of us are using Teams either in our own organizations or certainly in interacting with AMCHAM because it's become the platform of choice for the Chamber. Our first speaker, before I go into that, let me just reiterate one other point that we are recording the session. So if you have anything that you don't want to be captured for posterity, just be aware that the session will be recorded. Okay, our first speaker is Vivek, who is we're really lucky to have him come speak to us. He's been with Microsoft for I believe it's 19 years. Is that right, Vivek?
That is true. I'm part of the furniture, Peter.
Yeah, and his background has been in a regional role pretty much his whole career with Microsoft, APAC, doing focusing on enterprise productivity and on that data analysis and data insights that can be gleaned from what an organization puts together, and productivity obviously is a big part of what Teams is all about. So why don't we just move right into your presentation, Vivek, and tell us, what you can about Microsoft Teams and how to utilize it in an organization, and small or large.
Welcome to the AMCHAM committee members and all the delegates on the call. Thank you so much once again for this opportunity, and thank you for your continued faith and loyalty to Teams and all things associated. I just am waiting for the slides to come up. The way I've structured this for the next 25 minutes is I want to first of all give you the framing of how we approach not just Teams. This is not just about the product. This is about the framing of the larger conversation in terms of facilitating remote work. But I also want to then get into the product and show you some, things that you may be aware of, but not necessarily knew the context of why you would use certain things that might be brand new to you, hopefully, that you might find valuable. And then feel free to use the chat window on the side to please type in your questions, and I can take them as we go along or right through the session when the other speakers are speaking as well. So anyway, a little bit of introduction about me. Yes, I lead the Modern Workplace, now it's called Modern Work, business for Asia Pacific. Been in the company for about 18 years. This is my 19th year in the company across multiple roles. I'm going to just dive right into it because this is a short presentation. I want to keep it really crisp, and I'm not going to belabor the point. All of us know where we are. COVID-19 has impacted pretty much every kind of business, every individual, every size of organization across the board, some industries more than the others. And really the first 4 or 5 months was really about being in the business of survival. And I just want to bring us back to the mission. Everyone knows this. Everyone who follows Microsoft knows this is what we stand for. But COVID was really a strong opportunity for us to bring this mission to life for our customers, for partners, for people like you, and even for ourselves. Like, what did we really stand for? And how can we make this mission real? How can we help? And so next slide, please. Great. So we started working with China, who was really hit first, as all of us know, with COVID, by helping them set up the right infrastructure for Teams and just facilitating remote work. And we've seen some crazy numbers, right? This is unprecedented. This is beyond even our wildest expectation or imagination. This whole pandemic. Just think of some numbers here: 2.7 billion minutes of calling in a single day on Microsoft Teams. There's a lot of additional data points in that link that is attached, but that was really unprecedented. We are seeing companies, as they move to remote work, activate more and more virtual. So if you think of a PC or a laptop that you bring into work, you don't need that anymore. You can actually sign in from where you're seated and get access to not just Teams, but all your applications, information, data, everything that facilitates your work and workflow. And we've seen a 3x usage growth. We've also seen, as would be obvious, a corresponding increase in phishing and threat attacks and the security sensitivity, because people have a lot of free time, I presume, sitting at home, and that's the risk profile of organizations and customers such as yourselves has increased. And so we've seen we saw about 73 phishing attacks in a single day. There's more in that link. And obviously, this has driven a whole bunch of remote productivity, remote work, online events, online meetings across the board. Teams being the central part of it, but across the board, we are seeing many, many scenarios light up that I'll take you through briefly. While the previous 4 or 5 months were really about reacting to and responding to the crisis, this is really about what is next and shaping the future. In the context of today's session, I want to dwell upon navigating the now, which is this notion of remote everything. How can teams kind of become a platform for all of you to not just collaborate and communicate, but actually get real work done? And hopefully you'll walk away with some ideas. And so that's what we will focus on for the bulk of this session. Sarawan, next slide, please. All right, so what's the new reality? The new reality is remote work is here to stay. If you can, so we've seen what started off as remote work, or the ability to just do dial-ins and meetings and so on and so forth, has really expanded the scope to pretty much everything. Now we've seen contactless shopping, especially as delivery and logistics around the delivery, and that kind of has created a subculture and a new industry, so to speak. At least in Singapore, where I'm based out of, home ordering was never such a big deal. People love to go to hawker centers and restaurants and spend a lot of time in malls, but this has suddenly created a new opportunity for a whole bunch of food delivery intermediaries. We've seen remote selling. We are a big proponent of that. We have a inside sales digital center in Sydney that completely does remote sales as an operation, connecting to customers and helping them, and including helping them navigate through the technical deployment of it, which is everything is done remotely. We've seen retail, we've seen meetings online. Telemedicine is another big area that we've seen. I'm sure you're aware of that as well. And of course, remote learning. So I think the point is we are in an environment where fundamentally it is remote everything. And I really want to give you some ideas on how Teams kind of is a centerpiece for the 5 scenarios that light up. Obviously, the first core thing is getting people to connect and collaborate and be productive from anywhere. But that's not just it. Our approach to helping customers such as yourselves and organizations is really around thinking through end to end. It's not just about the people, it's about providing those people secure access to applications, devices, and the data that they need to perform their work. It's about continuing to facilitate workflows, no matter where you are, whether you're here or you're a first-line worker out on the field, maybe a healthcare professional who doesn't have the luxury of working from home, but still needs the tools and the information to get their jobs done. Continuing to make sure that customer expectations are met. That's obviously critical. And the 5th one is really around, how do you ensure that we enable developers to continue to build solutions that help customers address these newer scenarios. The pace of innovation cannot falter simply because we are working from home. So those are kind of the big 5 scenarios that we are thinking about as a company in terms of how we bring our products and the investments that we're making in the technology. What I will do today, though, is I will spend the bulk of the time on point number 1 for obvious reasons. All right, so the core part of this section is going to be enabling people to work and collaborate and be productive from anywhere. And so there's really 3 things. All of you are either existing users of Teams or are beginning to evaluate if Teams is a good framework or a good solution set to enable your employees and your suppliers to connect better with you, even at a time when everyone's kind of figuring out a way to work remotely, and when social distancing norms are still prevalent in most markets. That's the core piece. The second piece is around, how do you continue to engage and create the employee connection, even when all of us are geo-spread and working in our respective residences? How do you keep that teamwork and that culture and that collaboration going? That's kind of the second piece. And the third piece is, how do you make these productivity applications available on any device? What does it mean to be productive? What are some of the tips and tricks to make that a more inclusive experience? So that's the bulk of the session that we'll spend time on. Yep, so this is straightforward. What may not be fairly intuitive to understand is everyone knows that we use Teams for meeting and calling. We use it for chat and collaboration. But it may not be immediately obvious to a lot of you on the call that Teams actually facilitates work and workflows. So you can actually connect up Teams with applications that you might have inside the organization, drive workflows through it, so that it really then becomes a way for people to not just collaborate and communicate and connect with people, but also take action on important decisions and actions that might be part of the everyday workflow. And so so we obviously know this. You have been using it. You can make calls, you can take meetings, and so on and so forth. But what is not entirely, again, intuitive for some of you potentially might be that you can potentially get that work done. Teams is available as a full experience no matter where you are, whether you're on the desktop, a personal computer, a laptop, on an iPad device, on the browser, or on a mobile phone. You can continue to do work no matter where you are, and more importantly, not lose context as you kind of move through these experiences through your work. All right, so I want to spend a little bit more time on this because I really want to start showing some capabilities of the product, which is, I think, probably what most of you are interested in as well. But I want to kind of frame this in kind of 6 big top of mind areas. As I speak to customers and I learn about how customers are using our technology, obviously some key themes pop out over time. And what I want to really show you is how are these key themes relevant in an organization, and how does Teams kind of facilitate that? And so the key theme I want to drive here is Teams is about shaping culture and driving business outcomes. So the first thing that I want to show you, and I'm going to share my screen to show you a demonstration of the product and some use cases, is this notion of making hierarchy more accessible and reducing the power distance. We obviously are in an Asian culture where hierarchy is prevalent and strong. But how do you then create a subculture or a narrative that makes leadership more accessible? And I will show you a personal example of that as my first demonstration. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So the first thing that I want to show you is, obviously you can see that my entire Teams client is in Thai, or is in a localized language. And I will do my best to navigate and learn a crash course on the font very quickly as I navigate through this client. But in any case, let me first show you what I wanted to talk about, which is accessible hierarchies. So this is an internal group that the president of Asia Pacific set up. In the at the latter part of January, just about as COVID was hitting China, and we were really concerned about what it means for the rest of the countries and the markets. I just want to show you a couple of things. This is our current president. If I were to scroll down, you will see Ralph Hopter. Some of you may have had the opportunity to engage or interact with him in his prior role. He's moved now to EMEA as the president. But in any case, that's besides the point. The fact is, Ralph set this up as a way for a broad extended leadership team and some of his virtual team members to have a conversation on how best should we shape our response to COVID, help customers and suppliers and partners, and so on and so forth. That meeting was in January, right? As you can see here, why is this important in the context of what I'm making in terms of accessible hierarchy and reducing the power distance? One was, this was a great way for Ralph and the extended leadership team to get a more real pulse of what is going on, get more real-time feedback. This is a running feed of chat conversations since then, right? So that was a really powerful way for him to kind of cut through the fluff and get to the nub of the issues very, very quickly. And so it had helped him and the company and us as a region be more agile in terms of our response. The second thing is, the meeting was done sometime in the latter part of Jan, maybe 3rd or 4th week of Jan. But this is a chat thread that is still alive and active and engaged. Why is that important? Because sometimes as we go through from meetings to meetings, we lose context, right? We go to meeting 1, we discuss a whole bunch of actions, and then we move to meeting 2, which is set up at a later part of time, scheduled, unscheduled, so on and so forth. And then we move to another meeting. We just don't have a continuing context of these topics and discussions that come through in these recurring meetings. This is a classic example of what happens when you don't have to do that. We had one meeting. Now we have a running conversation, which is very, very topical. We still discuss all things COVID in this chat. But the narrative is now changed, obviously, a little bit more. But this is a great way to kind of reduce that dependency on hierarchy, but also ensure that there's this real-time engagement on topics without having to lose context over time so that you're not setting up meetings after meetings and trying to figure out what was discussed in the prior meeting, because everything is part of one singular thread. So that's the first example. The second example that I want to show, let me just use the slide as a prop to frame this discussion, is fostering teamwork, collaboration, and accountability. Now, it's obviously straightforward. I'm not going to belabor the point on how Teams is basically used as a communication and collaboration platform, but I do want to show you a couple of other things. Well, one is when that loads up, I use Teams for for basically engaging with my team. I have a team of product marketing leaders spread across Asia Pacific, and this is my team's channel, right? There's a couple of things that I want to show here. First thing is this notion of a private chat. So if you see this lock against it, this is a private channel. Why is it important? Because not everyone needs to be participating in all kinds of conversations. Scenarios would be, let's say you're in the finance team or you're in the legal team. There are certain conversations that have to be protected and have to be reduced to or restricted to a certain group of people. Great way for you to create private channels as a way for you to have these private conversations while having a larger kind of a group of people who are continuing to have the larger conversation. Think of M&A scenarios, think of any sensitive information or finance or legal or anything that requires for your eyes only kind of a model. This is a great way for you to facilitate that within Teams as a private channel. The next thing that I want to show you is accountability, right? A lot of people don't know that there's a tool called Planner right inside Teams. Again, no IT investment required. You don't have to go call IT, no phone calls. You don't need anyone to come set things up for you. You can go to and I'll show you how you can activate Planner inside. Just add Planner to your respective Teams channel, and it's a great way for you to assign tasks to groups of people, right? And you can basically create a new task. I'm going to do my best to and then you can add people here. I'm just going to add someone in my team, and then basically I think this is a sign. I'm going to assign it to her. Obviously I can get more sophisticated reporting, due dates, notifications, and she gets notified on the task being assigned to her. She knows when it's due, and she gets these notifications on how much time she's got left for completion of the task. Again, a very non-invasive, easy way for you to drive what I call accountability. Is a strong word, but it's a great way for us to make sure that we're not only creating that communication space, but also then following through in terms of how people are accountable for the tasks they take away from that communication. So that's a little bit about communication, about collaboration and accountability. The next one I want to talk about is diversity and encouraging inclusion. Obviously, so we work in an Asia market. All of us have a strong presence in Asia, Asia Pacific. Locale is important. Local language is important. As you can see here, this is the Thai language Teams. Teams is available in over, I think the last count was 65 languages, but we've added about 8 or 10 more Indian languages. So we have right now about 75 to 80 languages supported in Teams, and everything about Teams is localized. That's one aspect of it, which is not new. What might not be immediately obvious is, let's assume that I go to this chat window and I'm not a native English speaker, and so obviously I'm comfortable in Thai. What I can do here is I can click on this, I can click on translate, and that message is translated immediately to the locale set by the Teams client, which means I'm basically a native Thai speaker. I have Thai Teams. There's no reason why I need to continue to try to read English. So I can convert some of these messages into the local language. In this case, is Thai, right? So again, a really, really powerful way to bring in that more inclusion, especially as we work remotely and as we work in cross-geo teams. The fourth piece is self-learning. Some of you might already be doing this, but I just want to show you one more example. What we do, and this is just an internal Microsoft practice, is every Friday we set aside 30 minutes to have sessions on any topic. Very similar to this. It's 30 minutes. We bring in a whole bunch of people together. We have a subject matter expert who's speaking, And I'm just going to show you a simple example of how that content then becomes reusable. So here's an example of, and we call the program E5 Fridays. E5 is kind of our hero SKU. Fridays is because it's on every Friday. And there's obviously there's content. Someone speaks, is presenting present PowerPoint slides, showing videos, and so on and so forth. The whole meeting gets recorded, like this one is getting recorded. Now, what happens? A common problem with recorded meetings is, what do you do with the recording? Where do you save it? Where do you store it? How do you distribute it? What happens to all the other AMCHAM members who couldn't make it to this one? How are you going to distribute it to them quickly, right? Every recording in Teams is automatically converted into what we call a Microsoft Stream, which is a way for you to go and have a lightweight experience of the same meeting, audio, video, and everything that was done on the browser or on the mobile phone, right? So you don't lose any of the discussions or any of the points that were raised in the meeting. You get all of the meeting conversations and it's recorded. Now that probably is okay. You might say, well, great, it's useful, but what's the big deal? The big deal is this. A lot of us are obviously pressed for time, but we also know that, we want to quickly go through a summary of, or go to the points where a certain topic was discussed. And so this is the 30-minute presentation. I don't want to go through all of the 30 minutes. So I'm going to come to this search transcript window, and I'm going to say, hey, there was a mention of China in this presentation. And looks like at the 25th minute, there was China mentioned. There was something about, there was a customer in China. There's about some commentum in China. I can quickly go there, and so it quickly fast forwards the video or the track to the point where we want to listen to that discussion. And so it's a really great way to timestamp in a very non-invasive. This doesn't require IT investments. It doesn't require anything. It requires you as an end user to just know what you're looking for, go to the recording and start listening to it. And this is completely lightweight because it's on the browser and it's on the mobile phone. And so that's, again, one of the fourth scenarios, which is this notion of encouraging self-learning, which is even if you're tethered to a desk, you're not able to attend work. How do you ensure that all the readiness and the learning and the enablement continues to reach out to people using technologies like this? The fifth area that we're looking at and we're seeing benefits for customers is really around this notion of single version of truth. And I'm going to show you one more example. If I go here to my team, and I'm going to go here, and basically this is my team. I'm really interested, in how well Microsoft is doing in the way customers consume our technology and deploy it for business benefits. And so we have a whole bunch of dashboards that we use to manage the business. This is just one example of those that will hopefully come up in front of you. The sixth one is empowering the frontline, and all of the things that I've talked about really is relevant for everyone, every kind of employee in an organization, but more so for the frontline worker. So I just want to quickly show you some additional capabilities that we're investing in the product, especially for frontline workers whose primary mode of engagement is through a mobile phone. But it's not just about mobile phone and taking meetings on the phone. It's a little bit more than that, and I'll take you through that. The first one is, obviously, this is a platform for collaboration and onboarding first-line employees. It's about having the two-way dialogue, but more importantly, it is about having a easy, non-invasive way for the frontline worker to continue to be able to have peer-to-peer communication without being bound by radio range, without having to be sensitive about call plans and phones and so on and so forth. It doesn't need an FCC license, which is a good thing. So this is coming soon to Teams, which is a push-to-talk feature, which will make your phone into a walkie-talkie using Teams. Great scenario if you have a primarily mobile workforce. The other piece that I want to talk about, I talked about Teams not just being a collaboration and communication platform, but it's also a platform for getting work done. So this is just an example. In the interest of time, I have some screenshots of this connecting up to line of business systems at the back end and continuing to be able to then drive workflows through just the mobile app. And that's possible today. Some new areas that are coming up, I talked about private channels, but the other two you might find interesting as well. Every phone has a camera, but what happens when you click something which is contextually bound to an organization. The person is using a mobile phone which is personal to him or her. What we do with Teams is based on the inbuilt enterprise level capability of security features, we have a smart camera capability within Teams that we're building that will capture pictures but will never store them locally. So it's always stored within the boundaries of Teams. So you can't go to your pictures or gallery or your iPhone photo app and forward it to WhatsApp or anything else. So it's really, that becomes an important driver for security and compliance. The last one, this is my favorite because this is really about making technology accessible to more and more people. We will introduce shortly SMS Sign-In. So you don't need to be Vivek at Microsoft.com or anyone else. You can actually then use a normal mobile phone and an SMS to sign into Teams and continue to get work done. And obviously, all of this is underpinned by security and compliance. I just gave you an example of one of the security features, but I'm not going to go into too much of detail about this. The last thing that I want to show you is an important thing that is very topical. We've seen quite a bunch of customers come up with that request. Shift management is important, especially for frontline workers in retail or healthcare, anywhere where employees need to have a planned schedule for shifts. That capability is inbuilt within Teams as well, within an application, and it's available on the mobile phone as well as on the native desktop client. It allows you to clock in, clock out, create schedules, get them approved, have time reports generated, and also have geolocation. So it's again a really powerful feature. One of the strong use cases we've seen as customers come to us is this notion of what happens in a post-COVID world when employees return to the workforce but are still, we need to shape the work area in a way to afford for continued social distancing norms, right? And so we have that capability is inbuilt within shifts, which is you can use shifts to figure out the best combination of timing and seating arrangement so that when employees come into work, they can continue to be productive and safe, even while you're adhering to regulatory norms around social distancing. So anyway, so that was kind of a quick whirlwind tour on the 6 areas that I want to talk about in the interest of time. I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of the slides and then move back to Teams. The last few points is planning what's next and shaping the future, right? And here I'll leave you with just a couple of points to consider and think about as next steps. We're seeing a whole bunch of, and I'm sure you're seeing this and feeling this in your respective industry and business as well, as you engage with your suppliers and customers, is this notion of consolidation, rationalization is very real now. And people are very sensitive to costs in an environment like this. And so really our position on this is really helping our customers to use well what they already own, but also look for opportunities to simplify and save. And I'll just give you an example of what some of the work that we are doing. This is not so much about a pitch or a product pitch, though it does sound like that, but this is a real conversation that we are beginning to have with customers, which is around this notion of vendor rationalization and consolidation. And why do we believe that? Because we think that, a whole bunch of what customers buy from us, about 80% of that is left unused, and it's partly our fault. We don't help customers enough to make use of their investments fully. But I do want to call out that, when you think about a landscape that is consisting of how customers use username and password to engage and log into systems, how do you use tools like communication and collaborative tools? How do you use voice tools or even your antivirus? When you compare that, right, and you think about vendor rationalization, there's typically about $70 to $72 of additional cost when you think about the additive cost of each vendor. And so that's another area that we're really thinking, which is to alleviate some of the economic pressures that is coming out of COVID for customers. So I know that was a lot to absorb. We had kind of rushed through in about 20-25 minutes. But that's, in summary, what I had to share, a little bit of summary on Teams and the capability of Teams, and the framing of it in terms of how it kind of makes real work happen. So I'll just stop sharing now and see if there are any questions or comments.
Really informative and eye-opening. Let's move on now to our second presentation, which is from Alex Konnaris, who is the CIO of RMA Group. For those of you who don't know, RMA Group is a a large regional company. They have, I believe, nearly 8,000 employees, and they operate in 14 countries in automotive sales and service, as well as food service business. Here he is, and
name's Alex Konnaris. I'm the Group CIO for RMA Group, and we deployed Teams sometime last year. And one of the challenges we had was trying to get the message across to people of, what is the right tool for the right job. And what you can see here is an interesting matrix. And I apologize to Microsoft for having some red, sad faces against Skype for Business. But we're really focused on the new platform, which is Microsoft Teams, which I believe brings a lot of different functionality into one happy place. So I'm happy to report that we have a lot of nice green smiley faces there. A little bit like the previous slide, it's not just about the right tool for the right job, but it's also what I call what to use and when. So if we look at this matrix here, and especially we start at the lower left-hand side. So this is an individual task, something that you will probably do on your own, and also not in particularly a real-time process. So something that you do every day, but not every minute necessarily. So we're very familiar with some of these personal tools that we use. So OneNote, we're quite used to using that on our own, and Outlook, and OneDrive for Business, Delve, which is our dashboard. And I won't go further up to the top just yet, but as I'll move over towards the right-hand side. And then from individual moving through to the organizational level. So one good example here is Power BI. Of course, we might use it on our own, but we're most likely to use that in sharing it with either people within our teams or people within the whole organization. But what we're seeing here is Teams is filling in a lot of these areas. So whether or not it's the actual Teams functionality itself, but we have instant messaging, calling and video, just general online meetings, and also the live broadcast functionality. So it's very powerful in many aspects, as Vivek has shown. You will find that Teams will connect to your other tools, such as OneNote, such as Power BI. It has the document storage powered by SharePoint, which is great as well. Journey for RMA, like I said, we started last year, and I've had a look at the adoption rates, and it did take some time, but we had some big pushes across the organization, lots of training sessions, and lots of feedback. And you can see here from the beginning of this year, we have had an almost fourfold increase in the usage. A lot of that has been driven in the last 1 or 2 months because of COVID. So just in the month of April, we saw a doubling of the usage. You'll see a little bit of a drop-off a bit towards the end of the graph. This was because we introduced some reduced working hours. So it's understandable that it would be a drop-off. It's not because of system performance. And just some of our interesting statistics and who are sort of the top users. So in 1 month, you've got 8,500 meetings, and I'm very happy to say that our executive committee are the top users. We even have one member who is doing on average 7 meetings every day. I feel very sorry for that person, but at least we have the right tool for the job. And other interesting things like, nearly 400,000, chat messages during the month as well, and used by IT very much on the help desk side of things, and accounting. Interesting to see that they communicate a great deal using the chat functionality. So that pretty much draws what I want to say to an end, and I'll see you all for questions later.
Great, thanks, Alex. That's good to know that the adoption was relatively straight. Well, I wouldn't say straightforward, but it was a constant growth, and you were able to bring more and more people into using it. Our next speaker is Waleeporn, who is the General Manager for Corporate Communications at TCC Technology, which many of you know is a subsidiary of a very large, one of the largest Thai conglomerates.
Hello everyone, I'm Waleeporn Sayasit. Like Peter mentioned, I'm General Manager Corporate Communication from TCC Technology. Thank you for having me today. I use Microsoft 365, and during COVID-19 crisis, I need some tools to collaborate a lot with my team. So I use Microsoft Teams and learn more along with my colleague since the first day during the working from home. And there are 4 points of benefit that I'd like to share. First things that I found is the basic function. I like the scheduling, the regular meeting on the calendar, and I use it for the quick morning meeting to make the people fresh, and I can listen more to all my team members within very short time frame. And I found that it's very effective too. I can also add additional participants to the meeting, and I can share the file and give the control to my team, and we all together can edit the document like Word or PowerPoint. And another good function that we like is blurring the background. Sometimes we don't want anyone to see the background, and also we can customize the background also. Like this one on PowerPoint, we can do kind of some branding on the background also. And another function that we use is for internal training. We found that is workable. Like, for example, we use it for speech training, which require the presenter and commentator. We work together and we can present, and we can throw out the ideas and comments and record all in one place, like in the chat room. And we can later rerun it, and once we rerun afterwards, it's allowing us to easily find and review our weak points anytime. The third point is relating to the collaboration video. Recently, we just have the CSR campaign called Noinit Mahasan, this one. And we aim to make our staff to be active and help the people in need, like garbage collector, by donating the face shield and equipment to fight for COVID-19. So we raise the fund by encourage our staff to exercise and donate. And this is a time to leverage the tool. What we did with Microsoft Teams is recording our activities. Like on the left-hand side, we did with the Microsoft Teams by recording our activities, like exercise together during the meeting, and we can do the quick video right after the meeting. It is on the left one. And on the right one, this one on the center is we can later mix with the video or the photo and do another video. Okay, this is the sample. And last one, the last one is about the poll. For example, we may like to know how the group think, right? So we can easily run the poll right away. Like this case, we would like to know which logo that the group like the most, so we can run the poll, and this is the result. I found that Microsoft Teams is very useful, and I hope to learn more from others today so that we can collaborate more together in the future. Over to Peter, please.
Great, thanks, Waleeporn. That's also very interesting because the way you're using it is really a lot more focused on the collaboration of getting the message out, and sort of the not just public relations, but internal communications, within your team and getting people to buy into your projects on an internal level. That's great. That's a very, very interesting. Here is Sarawan Deaver, who is the Deputy Director at AMCHAM and has been really a breath of fresh air in terms of bringing technology to the forefront of AMCHAM's internal systems and also its ability to engage with its members. So let's hear a little bit about how that's going, Kun Sarawan.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Peter. So I'm not going to focus too much on some of the features because I think that Alex and Kun Som all have covered that very, very well already. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is more about our adoption process, because we've heard from a few big companies here. Now, I represent a smaller organization like many of you. No IT department, no IT staff, just somebody like me who's wearing a lot of different hats. So we do work with an outsourced IT provider who takes care of all of the installation and consulting, but most of the implementation and staff training is done in-house. So why did AMCHAM choose Teams? There are two main things we need to do. We need to do events and collaboration. Now, collaboration within our office staff of 15 is not so difficult, but collaboration with our 2,000 plus member community, including the maybe 200, 100, 200 core leadership members of AMCHAM, that's a little bit more challenging and something that we'd really like to leverage. So we did look at other events platforms like Zoom, and they have some really great features which are not yet in Microsoft Teams, so that's been developing. But events are all that they do. We had been using Slack and Trello for chat and project management, but as Vivek said, we needed everything in one place, and we were using Office 365 anyway, so we were paying for it, and it made sense to consolidate. We don't use at this point a fraction of the sophisticated features in Teams, but the most salient point for those of you who are SMEs or small organizations like us is how fast and easily we were able to go from 0 to 60 with Teams. So in Office 365, but we weren't yet using Teams or SharePoint. Back in January of this year, it was in our sights to migrate, someday when we had time. Then COVID happened, and we began reviewing our BCP, and all of a sudden we needed to be able to work remotely and deliver online events yesterday. So this happened very, very fast. 5 weeks after we first rolled out Teams to our staff for testing in February, we were all working from home and using Teams exclusively. 2 weeks after our very first webinar, we were doing a video conference with the US Ambassador and 150 attendees. And from then on, we followed a pretty intensive schedule of about 4 to 5 events per week with about 40 to 90 participants each, many of which had speakers who required training on the platform beforehand. So 3 months on, all this feels very routine. So now we're looking ahead at new ways to use Teams beyond just the AMCHAM staff and for building greater collaboration within our member community. So if you all are an SME and you're thinking about doing this, I highly encourage you to try it. It's very intuitive and you can build it up very easily without a lot of planning and structure. So my advice to you would be to start simple. Implementation can't be top down. You really have to engage all users in testing and developing and understand how they really make it work. For us, the structuring of work in teams and channels and chats, as Vivek showed, it really helped define our cross-functional teams. But that did involve a shift in terms of user habits. But in retrospect, I really have to say that all of our users of very different ages and comfort levels with technology, they found it easy to. And we certainly could not have shifted to work from home as successfully without Teams. Running online events, this was a completely new skill for us. So we had a ton of protocols to adjust and implement. Our events team, they all took individual ownership of figuring out the solutions to our problems and suggesting new processes. So we ended up overhauling our entire event planning timeline because of the new capabilities that we had with Teams. And we ended up putting events on our calendar now, sometimes less than a week before the event itself. And this is a huge change from our previous lead time of 4 to 6 weeks. So what next? We're comfortable using the basics, but we've only just begun to tap into all the collaborative features to engage our members. We already have some very successful working groups set up, especially our advocacy and other councils, but the guest experience is different in Teams from the staff experience, and we're still working out how to make that experience seamless so that our leadership can come together on the one platform. How can we leverage the collaborative process of Teams with events? Again, as Vivek showed, there's huge potential to take a meeting like this and turn it into an ongoing conversation. And since AMCHAM is all about connecting members, encouraging conversation and dialogue, this is something we would really love to experiment with. Finally, Flow, Power BI, Tasks, all the other apps for work processes. I just can't wait to get into that and use that to streamline some of our internal work. But that is, again, back to the priority of maybe someday when we have time.
Thanks, Sarawan. Again, I'm looking forward also to see how AmCham can bring more value to members via Teams and giving us as committee leaders more tools to be able to engage with our committee members. In the chat box, if we just can go to that, one of them was touched on already, and I'll just sort of elaborate it and put it in a little bit of a bigger. Would you say it is for an organization to have to be using Office 365 and to be sort of already using the Microsoft platform in a more organization-wide way in order to get benefit from Teams? I mean, many small companies are still running a site, site installation of Windows Server, or even just a standalone Windows on desktops, and yet they would love to be able to participate with this tool. What can you address on that, and how they can benefit from it?
Yeah, so I think through the COVID process, and there's a couple of ways we can answer this, but let me just keep it simple. Through the process when when our customers were hit with COVID, one of the biggest points that we wanted to focus on was reduce the friction that it takes for customers to onboard themselves onto Teams, right? And so today, if you're a customer, there is no mandate for you to go and be an Office 365 user. You can go on and sign on to Teams. Go to teams.microsoft.com. You can download the free version and you can get going just right off the bat. For organizations that have the existing Office 365 licenses but may not necessarily have Teams, we work with their IT teams to go and light it up for their existing set of users. We also then are investing in working with organizations, even smaller sized ones, anyone with over 150 users overall, to help onboard them much faster. So you can, to Sarawan's point, you can actually go from 0 to 60 pretty quickly. There's no rider that you should be an Office 365 customer first and foremost. If you're a brand new user, you have a completely onboard infrastructure, you can still get onto Teams just to get the job done. And obviously, as your needs expand and grow, we can figure out ways to address those as they come along. Does it help?
From the point of view of our AmCham members, who are, some of them may not even be on a Microsoft platform at the office or whatever, but you still want to engage with them. Are you finding that that's a roadblock to getting them using Teams?
It depends on how motivated they are. It's not seamless yet, as I said, we're still working it out. But people who really want to engage, they can join in through the browser app. It's not a problem, but it's not, as I said, completely seamless yet. We'll work on it.
Teams is available on Linux as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a Linux desktop user and that's your primary operating environment, you can pretty much use Teams. It's available on the browser and it pretty much does the same set of things. So
that's. Yeah, I'll just throw this out there, unless somebody has something else specific they want to put up. How do we move from this to, and this is not Teams specific, but obviously Teams can be a part of it. How do we move forward to make this remote experience and working from home into the new normal? How do we take this and move to becoming digital? This seems to have really catapulted everybody into, forced them into it. What do you all see as being the next steps to get people to make this the new normal, regardless of the platform, really. Anybody can jump in on that.
Let's hear from some practitioners. I mean, I work for a principal, so we do this routinely. Peter, it would be unfair for me to say that. Kun Waleeporn,
I can say from the membership experience, we have watched a huge uptick in terms of familiarity, comfort, and the way our members are reaching out. Before we embarked on this experience, I don't think we would have had the same level of engagement online as we have from members. But we've watched people across a number of different organizations who engage with us, people who are working in big companies with very sophisticated IT structures to SMEs. And there's been a huge uptick in their willingness to engage, their comfort with engagement. And I think it does create a completely different set of opportunities, certainly for us as a member organization, to have new ways of connecting, become our main ways of connecting. So That's very general, Peter, but
No, I mean, that's exactly the point. It's basically giving people something they didn't have before. It's not just, well, we're doing this until we can go back to, the limited ways we had. It's if people really can see now the benefits of doing something in a different way, then it speaks to staying with that and continuing on in that way. I think that's really critical, of showing them what they can do now that they never realized before. Alex,
and it's their willingness to do it. I think everybody has been pushed to a new level of comfort and willingness to try things that they weren't comfortable with before.
Yeah. Kun Waleeporn, you said you.
Yeah. I think I can answer this question, Peter. I feel that even though right now lots of people in the company, we are go back to the office, but some is still at home. So right now we use for the social distancing, right? So we keep distance. Sometimes in the meeting we have in the office we have the meeting, but not all of us go into the meeting. So some will be at our room, some will be somewhere else at home. So I think the team helps a lot for facilitate this.
Okay. Alex, specifically in your role as CIO, do you find that your CEO and board are have their eyes been opened as to what the future could be like now that they've seen this brave new world of remote working and collaboration?
Yeah, I think maybe we were lucky that we rolled out Teams last year, and adoption was slow in the beginning. We did a lot of working sessions with smaller groups of people, and showing them what they can do with the platform really generated a lot of questions and a lot of feedback. So I think by the time we got to the early part of this year and COVID kicking in, I think we were already up to a certain level, and just jumping to that next level was much easier for us. I mean, just doubling in the space of 1 month was I could not have predicted it, but I was very happy to see that we'd really made a big jump, and that goes all the way to the top. Like I said, our executive committee are the biggest users of meetings, and our world record holder of 145 meetings in a month is quite impressive.
Last point, Peter, on that.
Yeah.
I think this has forced us to accelerate our own innovation pipeline, right? In ways that we didn't anticipate and foresee. I'll give you a small example. What Peter's using, for some of you who may not be clear about that, he's blurred his background so that the focus is on him as a speaker and not the background, and we don't get distracted by that. We are adding a voice capability for that very soon, coming later this year. So we will suppress background noise. So if you're opening up a packet of chips, or you have a dog barking at the back, or you have kids, which is really very real. I mean, if remote work is here to stay, those are scenarios that come to life. So that capability you will see in the product pretty soon. So it's made us rethink and accelerate our own innovation pipeline.
Great.